Hello, this is Don Mitchell. I'm back to talk to you once again about Disciple, the book that gives you 60 lessons to help you experience and walk more faithfully with God and live a more fruitful life, the life that He planned for you from before the creation of the world. Today I'll be talking about part one, Experience God More Fully. And so here is a quote from Matthew 13:23, New King James Version, that captures this part of the book. But he who receives seed on the good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. In part one, Disciple will draw your attention to aspects of God's influence that either may not currently perceive or you may not currently contemplate as often as you would benefit from doing so. Before you begin the first lesson, take a few minutes to think about when, where, and how you have most intensely experienced being with God. I encourage you to note these experiences that come to mind in your journal or in some other convenient location. Then, whenever you feel far apart from God, review those notes to remind you of His presence and His desire to be close to you. Repeat such experiences whenever you can. So now let's shift over into week one of part one, days 1 and 2, which is entitled Contemplate Creation. And here is a quote from Matthew 22, verses 37 through 38 in the New King James Version. Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment." Matthew 22:37 through 38, New King James Version, describes what Jesus selected from among all the commandments in the Old Testament to highlight as the first and great commandment. I commend this commandment to you as your first memory verse. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. I've always been grateful in part to Jesus for his selection of this commandment because it is fairly easy to remember. However, whenever I sigh with relief over being able to recall it, I often then doubt that I can love God, in fact, with all my heart, soul, and mind. Perhaps you have had a somewhat similar reaction on at least some occasions. If so, relax. In this first part of Disciple, you'll be directed to verses and experiences that will make you want to love God more, which can be repeated until you can do so with every aspect of your being. Here's the first of these helpful verses. Quote, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Genesis 1:1, New King James Version. This verse tells us that everything tangible, such as a grain of sand, a beautiful flower, a tall tree, a mountain, the moon, or a distant star, and intangible, such as the laws of nature, a thought, or your spirit, was created by God. Clearly, contemplating the Creator of all such creations can leave us amazed, awestruck, and inspired. Thinking about His creation is also very humbling in terms of considering the vast gap between His capacities and ours. I'm beyond being merely impressed, and I'm sure you are as well. The story gets even better. God didn't create the heavens and the earth just to amuse Himself. Instead, He created them for a purpose that included you, as we see in Genesis 1:28, New King James Version. Quote, "Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." End quote. In addition, other parts of Genesis indicate that the plants were provided by God to serve as our food. So everything you see is intended for your benefit. Isn't that amazing? Our natural response is to wholeheartedly praise and glorify God for his great creativity and generosity, as King David did in Psalm 8:1, New King James Version. Quote, O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth, who have set your glory above the heavens. End quote. As scientists have learned and described more about how the physical world functions, believers wonder at his creation has increased. For example, tiny subatomic particles provide universal building blocks to form the astonishing variety of every physical thing we see and experience. God also can rearrange these particles to create whatever he wants, whenever he wants. As another cause for wonder, the conditions that allow life as we know them to flourish on the earth are all but seemingly impossible to find anywhere else throughout the universe, beginning just a few miles above the earth's surface. How blessed we are to have our world and the life-giving atmosphere that encompasses it. Further, the universe is not only so large that we cannot imagine its full extent, despite being able to attach immense numbers to describing these distances, but the entire universe is also expanding at an astonishing rate, one that's even faster than what scientists believe occurred when the universe was first formed. Within the universe, the twinkling stars not only delight and guide us at night, but they continually turn gases into more complex elements that are ejected into space to help form new celestial bodies while also adding material to existing ones. You undoubtedly have your own examples of how God's creation amazes and delights you. Write those examples in your journal whenever you think of one. As you do, leave some space so you can add more later to the list. As the second part of each lesson, you will answer questions designed to lead you through mental and physical experiences that will draw you closer to God. Feel free to engage in such experiences during both days of each lesson. Below are some experiences for contemplating creation as a means of more accurately appreciating God. And these are under the title of Experience God More Fully by Contemplating Creation. Be sure to engage in at least one of these experiences before starting the next lesson. If you enjoy doing so, perform more of, vary, or repeat these experiences. First, what can you observe when you look closer in studying a flower? Make notes about each aspect you notice. Try to find more than 50 different aspects. That's 50. Then reflect on the intricacy, the brilliance, and the beauty of God's design. Jot down your reactions and thoughts. What do those observations tell you about God? 2. What do you notice when looking at the big picture by examining photographs of galaxies or clusters of stars, such as our Milky Way? Notice anything that strikes you as unusual about what you see. Then consider the grandeur and the scope of God's creation. What do the objects in these images suggest to you about God? 3. What do you find when you simplify something into bits and pieces, such as by obtaining a large seed, opening it up, taking it apart, and examining its different parts? You may find it helpful to use a magnifying glass as you do. Then think about how God designed the seed to carry and nurture new life. How has God created you to do the same? 4. What do you see when you look beneath the surface? Go outdoors and pick up something that's been in place for some time, such as a large flat rock. Notice what's beneath it. You'll probably find life that's been operating in the dark, contributing to God's plan of providing for all creation. If you don't find anything under the object, gently dig a hole until something emerges. How does what you discovered affect your awareness of how extensive and complete God's influence is? 5th, what can a new perspective reveal to you? Visit some familiar place or scene. However, this time find a new vantage point, such as a much higher or lower one, and also look from a different angle, as to the left or to the right. How does the shift in perspective affect what you notice? What does the shift tell you about how you should perceive God? Sixth, what do the small forms of life tell us? Use a microscope to examine a drop of pond water. Consider how much life God has concentrated there. If you don't have access to a microscope, find a video of seeing the same on an internet site or in a photograph in a book. What does God's work on a small scale tell you about his presence and attention? Seventh, what can carefully examining something you've never paid much attention to teach you? What do you notice for the first time? Why do you think God included those previously unnoticed aspects? So I'll say goodbye for now. May this lesson and these experiences greatly bless you in drawing you closer to God so you can experience him more fully. Goodbye for now.